How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ron Swanson, and we're joined by Mitch Horowitz this evening, jumping into the occult history, the new books, the old books, the life of Mitch and his work. And before we do that, Mitch, right, can you just introduce yourself a little bit to our wonderful audience? Because I'm excited about tonight. So let's meet you. Let's meet you.
Well, it's good to be here, man. I am a historian of alternative spirituality, occultism, metaphysics, New Age. I describe myself as a believing historian, which is to say, I participate in many of the movements I document. I write about spiritual experience, both in history and in practice. Most historians of religion, in fact, do come from the congregations that they write about or are adjacent to them in some way. And I come from the occult and esoteric subcultures that I write about.
Okay, and well, tonight we're going to go through your work. But what do you feel before we get started is the most common misconception you come up against when people are, just beginning their journey into the history of the occult? And what do you find is the most misconstrued thing from the public?
The most common misconception is that the occult is sinister. If we damn it as such, we damn the foundations on which we stand. Occultism is the West's re-encounter with polytheistic traditions that predate our Abrahamic traditions, sometimes by millennia. So I'm speaking of the spiritual cultures of ancient Egypt, Greece, Rome, Persia. These are the Western lands where eventually our polytheistic traditions grew eclipsed by the rise of the Abrahamic traditions. And we as Westerners developed amnesia towards our own ancient foundations. The occult, from Latin for hidden or secret, is an attempt to re-engage with those traditions. The word entered the English language during the Renaissance because after centuries of what is sometimes called the Dark Ages, the old ways, while they had never vanished, were so moldered with neglect, unseen and unknown, that Renaissance intellects didn't know what to call all this rediscovered material. We, as a human community, were rediscovering ourselves. If that's sinister, it's damning the floorboards on which I stand.
No, for sure. Can I just double check that my mic level is okay for everybody? Somebody was just saying that my mic was up way too loud there, so I've dimmed it down a little bit. But let me know if you can all still hear me. Okay, so throughout your workings, I find no. Do you know what? Let's go back to when your journey began, Mitch, if you don't mind. What was it? What was it that drew you in initially to the occult and lost knowledge and all of this path that you're on?
I was a little kid growing up in the borough of Queens in New York City in grade school, and I was just fascinated with the unseen world. I was fascinated with newspaper astrology. I would look at it, for example, and I would say to myself, I get it that this is a filter of old knowledge that's been interrupted, but these signs, these sigils, this all has ancient roots, and that's very true. Our astrology here in the West, while it's undergone a torturous and interrupted path, and it differs from the astrology in the East, nonetheless, in its roots, it goes back to ancient Mesopotamia, to the third millennium BC. And it's one of the most extraordinary religious retentions of modern life. I would look at things like that and I would ask, where did this come from? How did this survive centuries upon centuries upon centuries of interruption and oppression and so forth and so on? I remember my sister bringing home books on flying saucers and ESP and Bigfoot from the public library. I was just fascinated with Pennsylvania Dutch folklore and the revival and survival of ancient traditions. I was so hungry at age 9 or so to know where all this came from. And I had the good fortune, as I wish for everyone, to be able to rediscover my childhood passions in adulthood. And so every day, it's extraordinary for me. It's an extraordinary privilege to be able to write about the things that ignited my passions when I was a kid.
I mean, we all get sucked in by the mysteries of the world, I think, at some point in our life. And never more is it more captivating from the mind of your childhood self, right?
Yeah.
Because the level of unknown is so much more of a draw, right? When you started doing your research, have you found that you have a particular element of history that draws you more, or a particular type of occultism that draws you more over your research, Mitch?
I think everything that I've written about usually stems from my wish to defend something or someone. I came to
Hmm.
realize that some of the figures I admired in the occult, like the esoteric scholar Manly P. Hall, or the mind metaphysics teacher Neville Goddard, who I have tattooed
Right.
on my left, Madame H.P. Blavatsky, the Russian occultist, co-founder of the Theosophical Society, the medical clairvoyant Edgar Cayce. All of these people, if they were written about in the mainstream at all, were subjected to a kind of butchery, in the same way that if you go on Wikipedia today to learn about parapsychology or ESP research, you experience utter butchery. There's no vessel within mainstream letters or reference to understand this tradition. And I realized, or rarely so, and I realized that if you don't write your own history, it gets written for you, very often by people who do not share or even understand the values that emanate from what you're exploring. So I suppose that resulted in my first book, which was Occult America in 2009. I wanted to reclaim and defend the lives of these people for all their successes and failures, for all their splendor and foibles. I wanted to render them as real people with a real search. So my interests are very broad ranging. I've just indicated some of them. But the driving factor behind them, at least as I approach the world as a writer, is the wish to defend something or someone that is worthy of defense.
Yeah, and I mean, I know myself just how vilified magic, the occult. I mean, obviously, once the big three came out, the big three religions were formed.
Yeah.
Everything, everything out of those books, from the history of the dawn of time, was demonized. Whether it was
Yeah.
fairies or witchcraft or whatever, everything was demonized, and it's really sad. You know, it's really sad that so many cultures and ways of life were just wiped out. And do you feel that we're at a dawn of an age now where people are becoming so much more drawn back to trying to reestablish these old ways, these old methods, whether it's through worship or whether it's through personal growth, because the big three are failing in people's minds?
Yeah. There's so much to unpack there, and I'm glad you used the very word demonized. That typifies the problem. The Greek root of demon or daimon at one time was a neutral term. It meant a kind of worker bee spirit, like a jinn in Arabic culture or genie in Roman Latin culture. The notion was that this is some earthbound or earth adjacent spirit to which you can make an appeal. The Greek term angel came to mean messenger, and that's become acceptable, obviously, within modern culture. But centuries of conditioning have turned the term demon or daimon, which again to the ancients was a neutral term like genie, into the ultimate taboo. It can never be saved, it can never be used. And to a degree, that's just another indication of how we we damn where our ancestors stood, ground that they stood on, beliefs by which they lived for literally millennia. Are things changing today? Without question. They're changing among the public more rapidly and more fully and more completely than they are among the institutions. Here in the US, at least, within mainstream academia, change is very slow. Within mainstream journalism, it's glacial. on Wikipedia or within reference sources, it's non-existent. Wiki, for example, is wonderful if you want to learn about the Napoleonic Wars. But if you want to learn about ESP research and parapsychology, areas I care deeply about, write about, it's an utter shambles. It's an utter shambles. It's hacked activist ideology, very often mono-sourced, if you look carefully, that disparages things from a perspective of sentiment and emotion rather than methodological rationalism, even though it claims the mantle of rationalism. But the public occupies a different territory, a different mindset, and discussions around extraphysicality, reincarnation, near-death experience, clairvoyance, telepathy, and, as you were alluding, exit ramps from the big three Abrahamic traditions, which can be limited in their scope, although I would make exceptions to that. I've benefited from exceptions to that in my own life. But nonetheless, people, they want a religious approach, whether they call it occultism or something else entirely, whether terms like New Age never even cross their minds. They want religion to serve as a source of practical solutions in daily life, which is my journey as well.
And I think for when we use the word demonized, right? This is another thing where people often fall into this ploy where everything that used to be is now demonic, right? Whereas it never was before, right? When you have all of these beings and entities and traditions that become this opposite of what they used to be, just because of the establishing of these new religions. And over your research, right? And let's just looking at the historical research, and we're going to delve into the paranormal stuff as well. But throughout your research, have you come across stuff? And this was a question from one of our viewers. Have you ever come across anything that you're glad stayed buried? Because here's the thing, Mitch, right? Here's the thing. I often say this little anecdote that good and bad have to exist, right? That's the wolf eating the stag. Good for the wolf, bad for the stag. The yin and the yang, good and bad is the balance, right? But evil, right, and love are two very bizarre things, because if I'm the most loving person and you're the most evil person, and we stand side by side in a room for our whole life and say and do nothing, your evilness and my love does nothing on the world. Zero impact. Because love and evil are the manifestation of man. And evil is one of those things that has no place here. And throughout this, I imagine you've come across things where you're like, well, actually, I'm kind of glad that's buried now and no one talks about this. Can you take us through moments like that?
Well, I can think of a few things in the book of Leviticus that I'm glad have stayed buried.
Right, yeah.
I mean, our own triad of religions grew from, and depending on where you live and the circumstances that you encounter, grew from a very punitive system of do's and don'ts. And the same was true of our primeval pagan ancestors. We come from brutality, especially if let's say, we look at the thousands of different tribes and groupings that made up what we would consider the biblical lands within the Mediterranean. Well, that was greatly fertile home to a vast range of polytheistic traditions, eventually became the springboard for monotheism. Life was brutal. It was short. It was tough. And the difference between death and survival could depend upon how well you got along or didn't with the guys who lived over the next hill. So the brutality of ancient life, not so much in my estimation, the belief systems, is what gave birth to evil, which is to say treating life as disposable. When I look for evil today in 2026 in the world that I live in here in the United States, I mean, listen, I could come up with all kinds of examples, and we often speak of evil from a sense of ultimacy. You know, it's Hitler, it's Chairman Mao, it's Epstein, and so forth and so on. And all of that's true. All of that's true. But evil for people living in the United States in 2026 is a private health insurance company depriving a sick person of benefits for which he or she has paid, and then
Mhm.
sending you a refrigerator magnet telling you to have a nice day. That's evil.
That, oh,
And that's where I find it in our modern world.
yeah. Oh, the modern world. In fact, you know what? Let's not even get started on the modern world. But let's just go back. Let's go back in time, right, where things make sense a little bit better, uh, because it's just this time makes no sense. It really, really doesn't. And have you come across lost faiths or lost ways of life that have fascinated you more than others? Because
Oh,
when we
absolutely.
when we think about our tribes of the modern world, right? I think there's maybe two left that we know about that are like untouched. There's those people on that island that keep like bow and arrowing everyone that comes near the island. No
Mhm.
one's going back there. And there's some knocking about the Amazon, right? But have you come across any that were just so unlike any others, right? Whether it was their brutal practices, their spiritual practices, or the way that they presented themselves?
Well, dig this. One of the things that I find most extraordinary is that our Neanderthal ancestors, our nearest pre-human ancestors, they had a spirituality that we could recognize. Among Neanderthal men and women, they created statuary, which in the mid 19th century got termed Venus figurines. They're bulbous feminine forms, which might be the appeal to some mother goddess or a fertility goddess. They had talismans. They wore eagle talons or bear claws, presumably for help with the hunt. And what's incredible to me is that these hominid beings, who are very much like us, but not us, who died out over 40,000 years ago, if you go to the very, very late stages of prehistory, as we know it, we could recognize their spirituality. It's extraordinary. And when you hear someone saying, oh, this spirituality stuff, it's just all conditioned and it's this part of your brain that lights up or that part. No, our pre-human ancestors, very similar to us, but not us, they had a different gait. They had a different physiology. They had a different spine. They had a different cranium, presumably different brain chemistry.
Mm.
And yet they're doing things that we could recognize in the 21st century in our digital age as spiritual practice. I'm wearing a talisman around my neck, a scarab. We could
Wow.
recognize it. And so that says to me that the spiritual or the extra physical is not conditioned, it's realization. It's realization. And I've been trying in my recent research to go back as far as we can possibly go, where we just have the tiniest threads and fragments of record keeping, in this case, statuary, and try to figure out who we were before millennia upon millennia of conditioning. And that's my wish, because so much is culturally conditioned that it gets inside of us. We cannot think outside of it. So you find things when you really dial back that are extraordinary. For example, within Judaism, the tradition that I grew up in, I had an Orthodox bar mitzvah. Jews were not always monotheistic. Primeval ancient Jewry had outposts of polytheism. We know this because the appellation El, that ancient Jews sometimes applied to the names of their children, that was the Canaanite god. There were members of the clan of Judea who, let's say, lived on the outer reaches of whatever the epicenter was at a given time, and they were polytheistic. So we make these assumptions all the time about where we came from, our past, how monotheism is baked in to the Western experience. And if you dial back, you find that that's not the case.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to these, when you try and the modern world tries to put into this evolutionary and timeline of how we evolve, not so much how we evolve, but as people and as how our society is shaped, do you find more and more indicators that just completely throw that out the window throughout your research? Because, for example, I'm not saying if you didn't give me enough time, I couldn't take two big slabs of granite and make them line up perfectly. It might take me, it might be my grandkids that finish it off, Mitch, right? But when you can't slide a piece of paper between two pieces of stone in a monolithic building, and that's staring you in the face, like we can see them, we can go there and go, something's not adding up here, Mitch, right?
Yeah.
But are there other moments like that throughout your research that are maybe a little less obvious?
Well, we know so little about what the ancients, what our primeval ancestors were really dealing with.
Mm.
I'm speaking in just threads and fragments. I mean, my God, there's recently been, as some of your viewers are probably aware, a rediscovery of artifacts from a primeval tribe in China that physically in their statuary look nothing like contemporary Chinese men and women. And they have large bulbous eyes, and of course, it prompts these speculations about aliens and so forth. But the fact is, there's one Chinese scientist who nailed it, and he said, look, there are physical dissimilarities in this ancient tribe which left behind visages, presumably of themselves. Where are the bodies? Where are they buried? Whole civilizations don't just disappear. And so, for example, if we look at the dating on the Great Sphinx of Giza, friends of mine, one of them now deceased, John Anthony West and Robert Schock, through using, I would say, traditional and validated geological methods, predated the conventional timeline of the Sphinx to possibly as old as 7,500 BC, or maybe as old as 10,500 BC. And they were excoriated for this research, excoriated. And the evidence, or the lack of it, that was always brought forward by mainstream archaeology was, you guys have proven unable to show us one shard of pottery in the intervening period that supposedly predates ancient civilization by thousands upon thousands of years. Where is it? Where is it? But that absence doesn't dispel the geological evidence that they brought forward, just as it's only in recent years that this lost tribe in China has been almost retrofitted into ancient Chinese history. Our planet holds extraordinary mysteries, and I think probably those who descend from us are going to discover a timeline in human history that will eventually be validated, that moves back the arrival of what we would consider civilization or community, so that when you see those granite blocks in which you can slide a piece of paper and there's such precision to the architecture, it doesn't steal that legacy from the culture that it springs from. It deepens it. It deepens
Oh,
it.
100%.
Yeah.
It makes the current explanation of it stink. Is what
Yes.
Mitch. They're only making themselves look stupid. Okay,
Yes.
because do you know what I'm saying? Because again, just take the two big blocks of granite, go outside, and just tell me when you're done. Tell me when you're done. I'll wait. Do you know what I'm saying? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
You heard about Coral Castle, right? That was quite a modern,
Mhm.
bizarre, what I believe, use of forgotten knowledge, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Have you seen any more modern examples of lost knowledge being displayed?
It's an interesting question. As far as lost knowledge is concerned, I mentioned I'm very interested in parapsychology. I'm very interested in laboratory based evidence for ESP, clairvoyance, telepathy, psychokinesis. Not only do we possess almost a century of academic based, replicable, unpolluted, bulletproof evidence for anomalous transfer of information in a lab setting, but we've even reached the point where we not only possess laboratory gathered, vetted, replicated, juried, published in mainstream journals evidence for precognition, but we possess evidence for cognitive retrocausality itself, the very bending of time based upon thought. A clinical psychologist at Cornell University here in the States, Daryl Bem, published a paper in 2011 where, among other findings, Darrell found that, and dig this and hear this very carefully, an exam for which you continue to study in the future after you have put your pen down, so to speak, will show a small but statistically significant spike in scoring if you continue your studying into the so-called future. In other words, there's a reaching backwards effect in
Hmm.
time. There's a disruption of linear time. We've known since Einstein that linear time is not ultimate. It's a conditioned necessity, perhaps, but it's not ultimate. There's a reaching backwards effect in time in which your score on an exam, on a cognitive recall exam in this case, is spiked based upon the continuance of your studying in the future. It shouldn't be there. It shouldn't happen. It's information that doesn't fit. And yet Darrell's research, which he published in a mainstream journal in 2011, has been validated in a meta-analysis that consists of 90 experiments, including the originals, in 33 different labs in 14 different nations. 90 experiments in 33 different labs in 14 different nations have deemed that research confirmatory. It doesn't mean every experiment succeeded. It did not. But the purpose of a meta-analysis is to preclude accident or chance or just lab mistake. This is as real as it gets. This is as real as the words I'm speaking. And we have this data for parapsychology that demonstrates the clinical validity of ESP, clairvoyance, telepathy, psychokinesis, cognitive retrocausality. It tells us that we are beings not just of motor skill and cognition, but there's a hidden world that we participate in.
Yeah.
And of course, we have testimony for that from throughout the ages. But for those of us who are attached to the clinical model, which I'm guilty of, however you want to look at that, we have the evidence. We have the evidence. This should move the public in a great way because the truth is, when a person feels that he or she is at the end of their rope, at the end of their emotional capacity, they're dealing with a problem, you're not completely limited. You're not completely limited by cognition, flesh and bone, motor skill, your
Agree.
brain lighting up that your headset wearing TED Talk deliverer will tell you is the totality of the human experience. It's just a chemical operation like
Yeah.
bubbles in carbonated water.
Right.
When the water's gone, the bubbles are gone, and that's your psyche. That's not true. Your psyche has extra physical components, and
Yeah.
that's a fact in 2026.
Do you know, I'm beginning to layman's terms in my own journey that they don't tell us about a missing sense, right? The sixth sense, if you will.
Yeah.
And it's frequency to me. And it's the only way I can kind of put it. I'm wish.com in my analogy, Mitch, if I'm being honest with you, right? But it's something to do with a connection with us all. And when the big three came out, of course, all of this knowledge was taken, it was suppressed. It was, you were burnt at the stake. I mean, being burnt alive was a big deterrent, Mitch. I'm just going to put that out there. And then, of course, they had to still admit the existence of magic. So they rebranded it to miracles and then restricted it within the texts of the books for those who were holy enough to bestow us with their righteousness, if that makes sense, because they're part of the one of the three gangs. Do you know what I'm saying? But you exist with those gifts outside, not gifts. If you've managed to remember what you're capable of outside of that, it's straight to the fire.
Yeah.
Do you see the rebranding of magic as one of the central detriments to where modern man is now with regards to our own capabilities?
That's a really interesting question. I do know that there are a lot of educated people who will use the term chaos magic or magic. I deliver a talk from time to time called Magic for Non-Believers. The idea being that ritual is causative, that if you reintroduce some exotic or unexpected particle into a local situation, this is really the basis of chaos theory. it will change things. And there is a ripple effect. And it is inevitable that you're going to get, if you want to put it in these terms, a different strand of reality. What is frequency? What is the thing, the vibration that allows us to participate in the extraphysical? I tend towards using the term selection, the idea being that maybe our five senses are no more than a biological means of measurement. We touch, we taste, we smell, we sense perspective. What is it really but measurement? And if we've learned one thing from a decade of quantum mechanics and the theories that have arisen to explain the surreal reality of quantum mechanics, is that measurement localizes, that we don't experience a thing until it lives in perception. An observation made by Hegel and the idealists and validated by the world-class science amongst the founders of quantum mechanics itself. Now, of course, that's talking about something on a particle world. Hegel is talking about something in a metaphysical world. Somebody might object, well, look, in the above ground world that we exist in, water is wet, you bang your toe, you're going to suffer pain. Yes, all true, all true. But a natural law, in order to be a law, must be consistent. So along comes Erwin Schrödinger in 1935 with his Schrödinger's cat thought experiment and insists to his own discomfort that if a particle exists in superposition in infinite places at once until observation localizes it, and that is as simple as H2O being water, that's absolutely indisputable, then it stands to reason that the activities of that particle, since it doesn't exist locally as a measurable thing, cause different strands of reality in our above ground world. It's unavoidable. And he proposed his dead alive cat to force quantum physicists to face the surreality of their own data, their own conclusions. Several years later, 2 decades later, we from the physicist Hugh Everett III received the idea of the many worlds interpretation or the multiverse interpretation. Could it be that when we talk about law of attraction or manifestation, or for that matter, ESP or retrocausality or any of these things that we've been touching upon, or the efficacy of prayer, for example, or the placebo effect itself, which might be the spiritual appeal reflecting itself in the body, all these things, could it be that through perception or hopeful expectancy, we are selecting, in effect, a different strand of reality and living from it, and it's every bit as real, every bit as tactile, every bit as actual as any other. But we live in a multiverse. We live in an infinitude.
Are you familiar with the double slit experiment?
Oh, sure.
Because I feel like that is quantum physics' way of nerdifying the theory of the cat.
Yes.
Right? Because it really does. The two walk so. And also, I don't know if you believe in like weird coincidences, but I swear,
I do.
I think this is the third interview where the guest is on their own accord brought up Schrodinger's cat.
Oh, really?
So now, Mitch, because of you, I'm going to have to binge watch all of the weirdest theories about the Schrodinger's cat until I find the one sliver of information that fits into the puzzle of my own quest. So there's 9 hours of my life I'm not going to get back. But the double slit experiment, right? That is like, I mean, how freaking mind blowing is quantum science and quantum computing anyway? Like, where are we finding these people that are coming up with that? Because I've got some questions as to what planet they are from. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Like I've met humans, Mitch. I've met humans. And none of them have been like, what we're going to do, we're going to make a tiny computer that pops in and out of reality. And then it's going to come back with information, but it's going to leave with no information. Are we? I don't really know how a battery works, Mitch. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like,
much less a final record. I mean, it's miraculous.
So are you now seeing a science that can compete with the mysticism of history? And finally, we might be able to, maybe not build a massive donut that smashes particles into each other and creates black holes. That's a bit far, Mitch. But do you see quantum sciences as being our scientific way of almost proving mysticism in some way, because I can't explain it and it's science. So, you know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, immediately yes, immediately yes. And it's funny because I have my most fruitful discussions with people in the hard sciences, people involved in quantum mechanics, people involved in uh, medicine, chemistry, biology. It's the social sciences and the humanities where I get the pushback because they are in this kind of fog of materialism where they equate materialism and extreme physicalism with
Just a tiny bit, Mitch. Just a smidgen.
yeah, and they can't abide the notion of, in fact, they don't even understand what rationalism is. They think of rationalism as outcome. It's not outcome, it's method, it's methodological replication. And the more people are steeped in methodological replication, the true scientific method, and you find this throughout the hard sciences, the more they can sustain discussions like this one. Quantum computing is a wonderful example. Now, quantum computing hasn't even been exposed to the general public yet. It's still in its beta testing. But dig this, a group of computer engineers at Google in December of 2024 released a statement where they said in experiments with their quantum computing prototype, which is named Willow, they gave Willow a math problem that was so complex that they estimated that it would take longer than the known age of the universe, past or future, to solve 10 septillion years.
Yeah.
And a 10 followed by 25 zeros. And Willow returned with the answer in less than 5 minutes. It's impossible, but it occurred. And the scientists theorized, and you can read their statement online, I'm not maladapting their language, I'm echoing their language. They use these words. The scientists theorized that that might be evidence for the existence of a multiverse because Willow, in effect, bent time. Their model solved a problem that supposedly, according to their estimation, would take longer than known time to complete. And the answer came back in less than 5 minutes. So where did the answer come from? If there isn't enough time to calculate it, where did it come from? Well, they theorized, inciting the multiverse model that we've been talking about, maybe, Willow plucked it, in effect, from a different intersection of time, a different dimension, where it dwells. And this is the basis of the Schrodinger's cat experiment. Schrodinger is insisting, and the logic is infallible, that quantum mechanics dictates a dead alive cat. It bends our sense of reality. It's surreal, and yet it's unavoidable. And so this is what instigated the theory of many worlds or a multiverse. And this is what the Google engineers in late 2024 were theorizing might be at play in Willow, this quantum computing prototype to which we haven't even been exposed, plucking this answer from out of time. It's a weird fucking world.
Bro, it is really weird. I tell you what, though, do you know what I sometimes think in the back of your mind? I wonder if during the initial calibration and calculation in the maths, if one of the scientists just got the math wrong, and rather than admitting that he got the math wrong, we're now having a discussion about a computer bending time. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they don't know and we don't know.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, everybody. When we talk about quantum sciences and quantum computing, it's not like Windows 95 and sticking some RAM in your computer. This is so weird. It's like magic nerd tech. Mm-hmm. And that's about it. It's probably going to destroy us all. Like someone's going to turn a computer on one day and we're just going to fold in on ourselves like a book, right? Probably. Okay. Because it's so unknown, bro. And like they like to pretend like they know what they're doing. Did you see? Right. Did you see they cut open two quantum atoms that had hit each other, and it was a freaking yin yang sign that was on the inside of this? I'm going to show you this, bro. This is going to blow your mind, because I used to think to myself, if I could go back in time, obviously we go take out the Nazis, right? If you could go back in time, you got to take out the Nazis. I'm going back to find the Chinese dude that wrote the yin yang, and I want to know what he was smoking, because this is wild. And I'll pull this up on the screen. Quantum atom, it's called. And I've shown this a few times, because how is this possible that one of the most almost borderline cliche symbols Like, I mean, I remember being a teenager and having a yin yang necklace on a black cord, right?
Yeah.
That's how cliche they were, right? How is this
Madness.
the yin yang symbol? That, bro, come on.
Yeah. Isn't
Come
it madness? It's so extraordinary. The symmetry of our world. I mean, you reference synchronicities or coincidence. I mean, the symmetry of our world. If that doesn't make you fall to your knees, what does?
Oh yeah, this is no coinky dink.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no one that's going to sit me down and be like, let me rationalize this to you. No, we need to go back in time, find that dude in China, okay?
Yeah.
And I've got some real serious questions for him, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because I cannot explain that. If that isn't as mystical as it gets from as simple as the technology of paper and pen, okay? You know, to draw the symbol all those years ago, to the most high-tech known science of or the modern world have the exact same image in them.
Yeah. And you raise a question
It's
that's
mad.
very key. Can we survive it? Are we prepared for any of this? And my God, we barely survived Twitter, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's
I
true.
don't know if we as a human community are ready for any of this. I mean, for the time being, we've survived the nuclear age. As of this moment, we've survived the AI age. I don't know what's coming in 6 months.
Oh, bro, the AI age. Listen, do you remember phoning your friends 10 years ago and going, Sheila, I was just talking about Fancy Feast and now Facebook is showing me Fancy Feast adverts. What's going on? My phone's listening to me. Well,
Yeah.
let me take you down a weird freaking rabbit hole of AI. I'll be like doing some concepts in AI, like mocking up some designs. And I swear I have thought about making changes that I haven't typed in those prompts, Mitch. Okay. And those changes have appeared on that design.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying it's reading my mind, but I'm kind of saying how we're all on this wave, right? This wave. What's the number one commodity to the evil energy vampiric bloodlines that run the world is your attention, bro. It's your attention. And if they can now tap into this sense of this frequency and start pulling our wants and our needs and our fears and our desires, we're screwed.
Yeah.
Like, we are royally screwed. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all for the tinfoil hat. I mean, I'm all for actually just rocking a tinfoil hat and just dealing with it, just accepting it, because it's scary. And when we have images like the yin yang appearing in quantum, all of these quantum sciences now, it does make you wonder what goes on here, because we know we're giving off a frequency. Holy shit! Did anyone else just see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mitch, something just like flew across you. Like,
is that right?
It was like a big white orb, and it just left a huge tracer right across your screen, bro. What time?
I'll rewatch when we're off. I didn't see.
Yeah, like 43 minutes in. So we'll go back and look at that. That was wild.
Just off, you know. I mean,
you never reacted, so it didn't look, because if it was a bug, you would have reacted to that. You know what I'm saying? That was bananas, bro.
I'm gonna rewatch it to see it.
Dude, it's crazy. So and now my ADHD's erased everything that we've just discussed for the last 40 minutes from my brain. Let's while we're talking about in fact, while we're talking about China, do you want to talk about why all of the windows and all of the arrow ports on the Great Wall of China face into China and not out of China? Because I'm sure you'll agree, Mitch, that there is allegedly a lost civilization that ran up the border of China. And I wonder if that was their wall. I wonder if it was the Great Wall of Tartaria rather than the Great Wall of China. Can we delve into Tartaria a little bit? Because
I haven't studied it. You know, I don't know a lot about it, but every civilization from Polynesia to Siberia has notions of a lost, predated, antediluvian culture from which it sprang. And I think as archaeological discoveries deepen, and as I hope one day licensing and money and political loosening becomes available to study some of this stuff, there's no question that our primeval roots
Yep.
are going to deepen and deepen and deepen. Um, and you know, it's funny. This is a modern story, so you'll have to forgive me for switching topics so
Oh,
abruptly. But
please do, Mitch.
China,
Honestly, our audience is used to me forgetting what I'm saying halfway through a sentence and then starting a new podcast mid podcast. Okay, so don't worry. Don't
I
worry.
my second book is called One Simple Idea. It's a history of the positive mind movement, some of which we're talking about. And it was published, it was translated into Mandarin, published in China. This now goes way back to 2014, 2015. And everything was going along just wonderfully. I was working with a translator in Shanghai. She and I were doing Zoom sessions all the time, trying to work through different ideas because our spiritual concepts here in the West radically differ from concepts in China. And so I would use the word soul, for example, and she would have no idea what I was talking about. Ask me to clarify it. I'd clarify it. She starts cracking up laughing. There's no fucking idea. But we're having an exchange, and it's real, and it's true, and it's actual. And after the thing got translated, Chinese censors came, government censors, and they cut 38% out of the book. And it was so damn disappointing because it was a time where maybe there was hope that we could have these serious exchanges. You could talk to somebody from an officially atheistic society and try to explain what we in the more spiritually oriented West might think about something. And it was destroyed. It was destroyed.
Yeah.
But dig this. This is
Yep.
interesting to me. You know, we're experiencing in our world today a rebirth of Gnosticism, the notion that we are living in ersatz reality. We are living under blinders, blinkers. There's a kind of false power structure that has us hoodwinked into thinking our lives are something that they're not. Now, dig this. Probably the best, what I consider to be the finest ever popularization of Gnosticism was the first 20 minutes of the Barbie movie, where Barbie starts to think about her own mortality, and then she realizes she's plastic. She's not living an actual real life. That movie was popular in China, an officially atheistic society, in Saudi Arabia, an ardently religiously conservative society, and everybody got it. Everybody got it. This one principle spoke to everybody. We are not ourselves. We are leading a false life. There's something wrong. There's some kind of artifice that is like a film covering our existence and blinding us. And it's remarkable that that's the ideology, even amid censorship and borders being closed and wars perpetual. That's the ideology that people in China, the US, Saudi, and other parts of the world can get down with. There's something there. There's a scent trail of something vital there.
Yeah, and it kind of blows your mind the way that people shift and going on just being on my own journey, right? I've met so many people over the last couple of years, and there's this whole awakening and lost knowledge communities. There's so many gifted people out there. I hate the words like psychic and things like this, right? Because I'll be honest with you, Mitch, right? I've done some things that I can't explain, right? And I'm on this very interesting little journey of my own. And I went and had a look at these psychics that used to be mega famous, and they would stand in front of an audience and go, I can hear a Billy or a Benji or a Barbara or a Bob, right? And I'm like, what is going on, right? So I started doing my readings, right? Through not knowing the person's name, not knowing where they are, not knowing their age, picking a random person out the side chat and delving into their existence and telling them things about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing for me is to get 50 people around the world all given random numbers and replicate that. Because if we're on frequency and chaos magic and the belief is more important, people, than you have any idea about. And I think to me, it sounds as mundane as making a sandwich because of my rigid belief in this unity that we all have, right? And this dumbing down of mankind. Do you see any evidence in your work that we're being saved from something, right? Because it's an interesting concept, because we all like to think of our evil overlords as evil overlords, right? But just for a second, everybody, I mean, I'm not forgiving the Epstein files or the baby jerky. We're just having a conversation here.
Mhm.
Let's flip the coin. Have you ever seen any evidence of humans unlocking too much in themselves, or we're a race who needs to be saved from ourselves? Because the Truman Show has a very interesting line where they talk about how Truman is never in a cage. He just chooses not to leave it.
Mm.
And that kind of got me mind blown. So have you seen any examples of us needing to be saved from ourselves throughout history? Humans unlocking too much. And then we'll get onto the Truman Show part, my ADHD side.
Yeah. I wonder sometimes if we can be saved, because I think we as a human community are so broken and so upside down and so asleep to our own nature. I don't know if we can be saved. People all over the world agree on one thing: there should be no more war. War is terrible. War solves nothing. And yet we keep having them, and there's such a gap between
Yep.
between conviction and conduct. And that's the human crisis, this horrible, persistent, yawning gap between conviction and conduct. You're talking about wanting to go back to ancient China and meet the man who formulated the yin yang, this
Yeah.
keeper of ultimate truth. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And dig this: we have all the ancient wisdom literatures to save us. The Tao Te Ching could save us. The I Ching could save us. The Bhagavad Gita could save us. The Beatitudes could save us. Marcus Aurelius could save us. Nietzsche could save us. But we don't, none of it penetrates. None of it changes being. I sit in an armchair and I read the Tao Te Ching and I say, right on, that's the right way to live. And I exit the armchair and the frictions of life take it from me. We are asleep. We are genuinely asleep. I think there's an automatic quality.
It's beyond sleep, right? Because even when we wake up a little bit, we've got centuries of repression. Okay. We've got whatever the hell modern processed food is. We've got chemtrails. We've got vaxing. We've got society, bro. Think about how difficult it is for the average person to give a rat's ass out with their own existence. They've got rent, they've got car payments, they've got to buy the kids new shoes. Society has been set up in such a way that, and again, you're talking to a guy who believes there's like a 5,000 year grand plan that vampiric overlords are rolling out to control us all, right? So just bear with me. And it seems to me that things like MK Ultra, things like these secret experiments are just a way for the government to try and re-tap into these and forgive my terminology, but patent them for their own use, as opposed to it being something that we all take part in. Have you seen yourself, and again, you're through your parapsychology things, have you seen people unlock things that are just unexplainable, that you could understand why a government would want to weaponize against us?
Well, I'll share this. I have seen things unlocked in that research. We were talking, for example, about Darrell Bem's cognitive retrocausality. I have seen things unlocked in that research published in journals that are not sympathetic necessarily in the direction of the findings. In fact, they're very often hostile to the findings, but there's a small cluster of scientists that keep bursting through to the mainstream just due to their own intellectual efforts. Darrell is one, Dean Radin is another. And the findings are so extraordinary, and the pushback is so calumnious and irrational and coordinated and so dominant of Wikipedia, for example, still a very important reference source, that it is authentically difficult to understand. And there are probably about 50 scientists in the world today who are doing hardcore parapsychology research. And I am probably friends with half of that 50. And I've talked it over with some of my friends. And in private, the question arises: is this attack on parapsychology, the sheer irrationality, the sheer tone deafness and willingness to repeat falsehoods about the data and the work itself with an eye towards discrediting it. Is it coordinated? Is it paid for? We don't know. We just don't know. But it is so outrageously repetitive, condemnatory, unreasonable, coordinated, frequent, that it is hard to understand. I consider myself a student of human nature. I'm interested in human nature. I understand people, I try to understand people's fears, why we push back against things, and we can all come up with our own analyses of that, and it's all legit. But when you witness the cultural suppression of a branch of science, in this case parapsychology, that has been silenced to the point where you can't even get funding unless you're doing independent fundraising, which is very difficult for this data. We used to have here in the States a parapsychology lab at Princeton University. It was called PAIR, the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. The funding is gone, in short. There used to be parapsychology labs at Duke, at Cornell, at other highly regarded schools. It's all gone. The landscape has been.
Why do you think that is, though, Mitch? Do you not think if we've got PE and religious education and that's getting funded, that they've found something and they've realized, oh crap, this can't be a thing now. We can't, like, if we're ever going to sell iPhones, people can't be talking to each other through their brains, Mitch. Do you know what I'm saying? That's bad for business.
And it's I'll give you an example, and this is it's hidden in plain sight in a sense. At the PAIR lab at Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, they did wonderful work. The lab closed after the retirement of its founders. They just couldn't keep fundraising anymore, and the university wouldn't support it. They do experiments, and you can find this material online. Anybody can look it up, parse the data for themselves, and damn me if I'm exaggerating. Hold me to it if I'm exaggerating. The Global Consciousness Project has placed what are called random number generators at different spots around the world. These are just machines that spew out chaotic, random patterns of numbers. There's no symmetry whatsoever. Princeton researchers found that at periods of global trauma, specifically 9/11, but not that example alone, patterns will appear. There will emerge a signal in the noise. A pattern appears in these random number generators, or eggs, that are placed throughout the globe. This occurred, for example, not only in the hours immediately preceding and following the events of 9/11, but likewise the first election of Barack Obama, the first election of Donald Trump, any time where global emotions are running high. For whatever reason, they detected a signal in the noise, so to speak, an appearance of symmetry amid the output of these entirely chaotic random numbers, which speaks to a psychokinetic or PK effect, a global consciousness. Can we harness it? Can we use it? Well, these are vast questions, but that it exists is settled science if one abides the evidence and if one abides the replicated methodology that went towards the evidence. Now, the professional skeptics apparatus, which has withered, which is not as significant as it once was, but is still plenty significant, will tell you there's no replication, there's no evidence, there's no meta-analysis, these are mistakes, they're wrong. And in my writing, I document these things with scrupulous notes so that anybody can go and not only verify what I'm saying, but again, hold my feet to the fire if I'm exaggerating. I have told the story that you and I were discussing earlier of the quantum computing model Willow at Google and the Google engineers speculating that this may be evidence for the multiverse. There are people who will write, maybe in the very comments to this episode, that's a misrepresentation. Look at the statement coming from Google. Not only is it not a misrepresentation, I'm using their language. If anything, I'm being conservative. Go look at it. Go look at it. It's simple. They use the term multiverse, not just Mitch. And this actual denial of the record, I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, do you know what? My brain always goes, everything has an opposite, right, reaction, right? So isn't it interesting, Mitch, that if we look at the planet, we're kind of miserable, right? Like we've killed all the lions. There's like 4 lions left. Like all the orangutans and tigers are done because we need cheaper Doritos, need cheaper oil to fry their chips in. We're not super cool, and we're also not super happy. I think most people, the iceberg effect of happiness, right? Oh, everything's great. Do you know what I mean? And then they go home and it's just 90% of suppressed misery, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, Mitch, let's have a think of this. When you have a synchronized event, right, like 9/11, okay, pretty traumatic, right? And that is a massive collection of unified feeling. It's a bad feeling. And then we've seen the numbers change and patterns form, right? I wonder if by design we're all kept miserable because surely the opposite side of the coin would be collective joy, right? And something else happening in the numbers. Because there's a reason why we're all kept so logged down. And, you know, it's often the minute that we step outside, touch some grass, listen to the wind, get a bit more in tune with the world, that we start, you know, feeling a little bit different and we start thinking a little bit different. And Mitch, have you not noticed that the most unexplainable, like bleeding Jesus and crying Mary statues, always happen in some mad little Brazilian village where their whole life, Mitch, and I don't mean like, oh, I'm religious, I go to church once a week and we do Christmas. I mean, their existence is their religion. Is that a collective belief making that happen? Is our collective unity of not just thought but feeling got more to this than we can know? Because I'm telling you now, Mitch, that whole numbers 9/11 speech you gave is going to live rent free in my head for the next week. Okay, that's what's going to happen, because there has to be the opposite, bro. The negative version of that can't exist without the positive version of that. That's the yin yang, bro. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I wonder, and listen, if I was the evil powers that be, and all I knew is it would take for us, if we were all collectively happy, collectively balanced, collectively just existing in a happy world, that collectively that would boost something. It would raise us higher collectively. That's nothing more terrifying than the powers that be than that, bro. They killed Lenin for even just bringing out some songs that brought people together. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, there was a mental healer in this country, in the U.S., in the mid 19th century, Phineas Quimby, who said, man's happiness is in his belief. And he meant it in the most literal sense.
Yeah.
There's truth to that. That resonates with the public. Man's happiness is in his belief. And what you were just saying about the crying statues and so forth, I take some of those miracles very seriously. They're actual, they're research, they're real.
Some of them, Mitch, are, you can't explain it.
You can't explain it.
Like some of these places, you can't find a lighter, right? Let alone the technology to whittle a bleeding statue that science can't explain.
There's no question. And look, I've written about this in my book, The Miracle Club, and other places.
All right.
There are worldwide cases here in the United States, about 15 of them each year, and the numbers are obviously larger worldwide, of spontaneous remission of terminally diagnosed cancer. Spontaneous remission of terminally diagnosed cancer. And I value this record because it's written about in mainstream medical journals. This is not in a journal of religion or theology. And the reasons that mainstream physicians give is, well, maybe it was a misdiagnosis. Well, maybe the person had a virus that was suppressing their immune system. The virus lifted. And there is third and finally the psychological factor. That's their way of saying a miracle. The psychological factor. And I document this with great care because the last thing on earth I would ever do is give false hope to somebody who is suffering. But it is an equal and opposite violation to deny the existence of the miraculous, because when a record repeats, when a testimony repeats, when an event repeats, it does become part of factual record. And again, I will give people the notes in my writing and in my books. I think I have a piece for free on Substack, Can the Mind Cure Terminal Disease? Rarely, yes. Rarely, yes. And look at my footnotes and hold me to the fire if I am exaggerating. The cases do exist. We don't understand them. I'm not saying we can harness them, but are they real as the words I'm speaking?
Right. And but here's the thing, right? We live in a world where people genuinely don't believe their own eyes anymore, right? Like you could have the most compelling evidence of a freaking unicorn being found somewhere, and everyone's just going to tell you it's AI. You see what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
So we're in an even bigger world of disbelief now, and it sucks a little bit, right? But here's the thing that annoys me the most: is this is not something that when it happens to people, they're capable of explaining super well themselves. Like if you all of and listen, everyone that's watching, I want you to remember a time where, like, if you existed when there was only like 4 TV channels, unless you had cable, right? And like on a Monday night, you were like, "Oh, I've not seen that movie in so long," right? And then 2 weeks later, that movie suddenly appears on the TV, right?
Mhm.
Or you think to yourself, "Oh, I've not spoken to Steve in ages," and then 20 minutes later, Steve phones you. Okay, these we write off as coincidence. Coincidence is one of the most damning words in the world. Okay, whoever son of a bitch came up with that, you've screwed us, because magic is so subtle. Hollywood is, if I could shoot fireballs out my hands right now and show you all, I would do that. But
Mhm.
the subtleties of magic are so, and that's what's so beautiful about it. And that's why it's so in front of all of your faces, but none of you can see it, because again, your family was all burnt at the stake for this, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? History doesn't tend to do it well. Do you think that with the subtleties of it, with it all, that people are so past believing in something that doesn't have Emperor Palpatine shooting lightning out of his fingertips? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're making a very important point. Magic is subtle. Heraclitus said nature likes to hide. The same could be said of magic or the occult. It likes to hide. And look, we dwell under many laws and forces. We live under a multitude of laws and forces. That's why I avoid terms like law of attraction or manifestation, not because I don't agree with them so much as they imply the existence of one mental super law. We experience whatever the nature of ultimate reality, which may be consciousness, which may be awareness. We experience within our umbrella reality a complexity of laws and forces, which is
Hmm.
why we can't just speak in terms of doing an Emperor Palpatine or just showing this. But when something appears that's so extraordinary that it avoids that it surpasses all common analysis, we
Hmm.
begin to see the magic of the world. Now, you were talking about extraordinary synchronicities, or what that
Yeah.
son of a bitch called coincidences,
Yeah.
whomever he is. Um, everyone listening has had experiences in his or her life that elude all statistical analysis. The cynics like to trot out the law of large numbers. Well, because the world is so large, unusual or bizarre things have to happen to someone. Well, okay, granted. But to cite the example that you were using, your long lost friend who you haven't seen, and here he comes walking down on the beach, that surpasses the law of large numbers for the simple reason that an actuarial table might be great at deciding how long a certain person is going to live in the state of Iowa. But an actuarial table falters when trying to measure the personal emotional stakes of an event or an episode on the lives of the two individuals involved. Let's say you meet your long lost friend Mike on a lonely beach somewhere, and it's heightened by the fact that you were just thinking about Mike a moment ago, or at
Right.
that very second. You were thinking about the fact that last time you saw him, you parted on bad terms. You had an argument, and you're wishing I could revisit this. I could revisit this. I know this could have a better outcome. You start to pile up all these emotional intimacies, and the possibility exits the vessel that any actuarial table can carry. There's no such thing as a law of large numbers at a certain point, just like there's no such thing in our linear reality as Willow, the quantum computing prototype, solving a problem in less than 5 minutes, based on what we know, that should take longer than the extant time of the universe. So we have to start to allow for different laws and forces into our world. Instead of shutting these things down, burning them at the stake, so to speak, let's question Let's be curious. Let's fund. Why the hell is there not a parapsychology lab anymore at these universities?
Oh,
Is this,
those are two different things. There's,
yeah.
you know why? Because they discovered a bunch of stuff and they were like, we can't. If people start curing their own cancer, Mitch, okay, we're going to have problems. Okay, that's really bad for business. They learned that with polio when they cured polio and went, ah, shit, we should have just made people live with this. Do you know what I mean? But the concept of people having it in front of their face and denying it, right? Do you think that it's a modern day Bigfoot effect? And it was really interesting. Someone in the side chat just said it's not magic, silly billies, it's quantum physics and things like this. And I was like, hell
It
yeah.
goes by any other name.
Here's the thing, Mitch, right? I bet that guy is a science-based mind, right? And we're finally getting the science-based minds to be like, okay, magic is a thing, but we've got to call it quantum something. I'm
Sure.
okay with that, bro. I'm
And
okay
go
with
right
that
ahead, man. Go
because
right
it's
ahead.
no
I'm not
longer denial, right? It's no
gonna, yeah,
longer denial, and I'm
right,
okay with that, right?
right. I mean,
With
if I call it magic and someone else calls it ritual and someone else calls it quantum physics, like our
yeah,
friend in the chat, be my guest.
oh yeah,
I'm not going to get hung up on words. I use the old terms because I don't want to cede them to critics. So I will use New Age, ESP,
I'm
occult, and apply these things to myself because I think those things have historical integrity. If you want to use a different term, be my guest.
well, you know, but what fascinates me more is that there's now we're going to start seeing a scientifical offshoot, a scientific offshoot where magic is accepted but put into a box. And I'm excited to see what comes from it because, you know, very rarely do you see scientific minds wanting to acknowledge off-world life or ghosts or anything that they can't literally replicate in a lab. And now things are starting to get replicated, and it's interesting. It's an interesting step forward. Sadly, again, evil vampiric bloodlines that control the world kind of keep us a little bit screwed. But look, I want to pivot for a second, right? I want to talk about sigils and spooky symbols for a minute here, right? I'm a big believer in sigils, sigil magic.
Mhm.
I'm also a believer in, with my limited studies of in what makes the universal laws tick. It basically boils down to your free will. That's basically. I'm sure there's other laws, but the fundamental motion of the universe is free will, right? And a lot of people don't realize, Mitch, that by turning on this YouTube video, they've given over their free will. Or
Mhm.
by listening to a song, they've given over your free will. The symbol on the spine of the book behind you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if Mitch was an evil overlord, I mean, he could just make a pretend book, slap an evil symbol on it, suck our energy through the screen. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. But sigils and modern occult in movies, cinema, daily life that is being used against us, how prevalent do you think it is?
Horror movies are an interesting case in point
Okay.
because they are probably the only form of mass entertainment where storytelling and belief
Okay.
intersect. Nobody watches Star Trek and says Captain Kirk is real, but we will watch a
Bro, I
horror
have met
movie.
some crazy people that will tell you the total opposite.
Most of it.
Go Comic Con. Go Comic Con. Okay, I guarantee
Okay.
you. Right, no, carry on, Mitch. Sorry. Go
Maybe
on.
I chose the wrong example, but
No, no,
but
that was
you
the
know
joke.
but we will look at the horror genre, for example, and the supernatural, and feel like that is fucking real. Like I'm a big fan of the recent movie Obsession, and I don't want to give spoiler alerts, but man makes wish, man gets wish, and horrible tragedy intervenes. There's great metaphysical truth in that the man making the wish, and you'll have to forgive me, it's a horror movie. I don't think anybody expects a happy ending, so you'll have to forgive my
Don't,
spoiler
don't,
alert.
no, don't spoil it, Mitch.
Okay,
I've just looked it up. It looks like a good movie.
it's
Okay.
fucking good.
It's,
It's
it's,
wonderful. It's
is
the
it
story of our metaphysics to a very great extent. It's the story of our metaphysics.
is this the right one here?
Yeah, I think so. I'm having a
Filmed by
little trouble seeing.
Curry Barker.
Yeah, and it's so funny because the actress in the film was recently photographed with a book that I published of the writings of Neville Goddard, who taught that your imagination is God, essentially, that what is referred to symbolically as God in Scripture, Old Testament, New Testament is your imagination, and that everything that you experience are your thought forms, your emotionalized thought, pushed out, concretized into the world. So obsession plays with that theme and asks what happens when we use that to manipulate another person. I will not give a spoiler alert. There's unhappiness. And I think that we look at that and we understand that. We look at that, and yet at the same time, I have to admit, I really encourage experiment, because people will ask me sometimes, should I avoid doing something, sigils or something else? What if the unexpected occurs? Well, there's going to be consequences no matter what the individual does. But we have to live with more of our capacities. We have to live with our metaphysical capacities. The question of what's driving this engine, the question of whether there's going to be an unwanted outcome, is an unknown. The only sword and shield we have against an unwanted outcome is our own ethics. Ethics arise from empathy. That is my definition of ethics. What else would ethics be? Ethics in conduct arise from empathy. If we can move through the world with reciprocity, with compensation, with what in the Vedic traditions is referred to as karma, not a term I use very often because it's so vast. I speak more in terms of reciprocity. I want people to experiment. I want them to discover a possibility of a larger self. Sigils can be part of that.
For sure. For sure. And it's interesting there what you said about empathy, right? Referring back to the evil, and the most evil person, most loving person, right? Because empathy I've boiled down to, because these evil people, if you're in the Epstein files, you're not capable of love, and you're not capable of empathy, right? Because empathy is a byproduct of people who feel love. Okay? If you don't feel love, empathy can't exist. So it has to be a byproduct of love. And the levels in which evil can flourish is terrifying. I'm sure you'll know historical monsters, but in the modern day, we've got individuals who parance around. We've got email scandals and pizza scandals and high priestesses that are into fashion and art and all of this. How convinced are you of the deep-rooted occultism in politics, Hollywood, the music industry as it is today?
Well, apropos of that, let me say something about Epstein.
Please do. I'm always happy for people to get a freaking Epstein, man. I mean, I can see you.
He brought up Epstein. Listen, I'm not steeped in all of the Epstein
shenanigans.
Catastrophe. So I can't speak to every part of it, but there is something I have noticed.
Sure.
Epstein, who died 6 years older than I am, he died age 66, I'm age 60, so, I suppose you could call us contemporaries. Here in New York City, which has been my lifelong home, Epstein liked to collect a lot of intellectuals. He liked to have these intellectual salons where he would bring a bunch of intellectuals, different university professors and so forth, to dinners, and that was part of his fetishization of the people in his circle. That's who he liked to collect. I never was invited to any of those goddamn dinners.
Mitch, I thought that's what we were building up to. It was like Epstein didn't know anything about the occult until he met me, and I fucked up. And I'm really sorry, everybody. Okay, my next book is I'm really sorry. I
fucked up in a royal way.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna find me in those Epstein files, but what you will find in the Epstein files, and what you will find among the intellectuals that he collected and invited to all these salons, what you will find is a lot of the very people, and I ask people, listen to this very carefully, hear this very, very carefully. A lot of the very people who push back most vociferously against the kind of parapsychology research that we have been intermittently discussing. Within the invitees on the Epstein list, and people have their ways of looking this up, are some of the very ultra-physicalist, ultra-materialist intellectuals who have opposed my efforts, sometimes by name, to write about parapsychology in a clear, well-sourced, accurate way. And a theory maybe it's going too far to call it a theory, but I'll speculate, and I'm writing about this in an upcoming article. It's possible that this kind of value-free rationalism that denies any tendrils of connection, including psychical connection, among us as a human community, which I consider abjectly false, because there are clearly these extraordinary connections. Call them synchronicity, call them quantum physics, call them magic, call it karma. Use whatever term you want, and we've got thousands of them that are all centering on the same thing, which is the hidden tendrils of connection among us as a human community. The key intellectual voices who make a mockery of that concept, including in matters of parapsychology, were on that invite list, were the intellectuals who were going to the Epstein salons here in New York City and elsewhere. I was not on that list, and I'm damn proud not to have been on that list. But the people who opposed parapsychology most vociferously and regularly, some of them, were on that list. And I think that mindset, that mad, value-free pseudo-rationalism, is what abets the act of tormenting and exploiting and harming another individual.
Do you know what? It almost gives people in their mind a right to do so.
Yes.
Right? Because, listen, what do you get the weirdo who's got everything for Christmas? You lure him in with the occult, right? The forbidden knowledge. Oh, we're going to wear hoods and masks and shit in a basement. It's going to be sick, right? Because it's that allure of the unknown, right? And we have to assume that if you're the sort of person that can be worn down to standing there and performing ancient blood rituals and sacrificing to get yourself ahead in life, that's a very niche group of people, right? And it's not just people that are into children, because people will do things just for money, just to further themselves. But that mindset is so far from normal, Mitch. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The allure of getting ahead through the occult, I think, is a massive part of what we're seeing play out in the modern world with, I mean, the music industry. And here's another thing, Mitch, like the mindset of kneeling down in a church, lighting a candle and praying, right? And transferring that energy to a deity is exactly what people sit and do on Instagram in the modern world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They sit and look up at a celebrity and idolize and project and wish and want. And I wonder if that's how we've got so many famous, talentless individuals with 60 million subscribers on Instagram, because the harvesting is real.
These are tough questions. I would want the listener to dig, as I'm sure many do, that you have people like me and like my colleagues who explore occult and esoteric philosophies, and who do so with a sense of reciprocity, a sense of human community, a sense of giving a damn about the people that I love around me. So there are people for whom my aesthetic and my beliefs are a turnoff. And I understand that, but dig that what was going on within the Epstein circle, the abuse, the absolute value-free rationalism, those people are among them are some of the most vociferous critics of the metaphysics that I'm trying to accurately and popularly write about, so that there exists a good alternative to Wikipedia and people can really learn about this.
You just nailed it. You just said out loud the exact reason why you will be vilified. You can't write it down and share it with the world, Mitch.
Right.
You've got to get down in the evil jerky basement and put your freaking gown on, bro. Like you're the enemy of these people, right? They're the practitioners. You're the researcher. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's like, there's nothing worse. I mean, look at there was a gentleman, I can't remember his name. He was about to publish a bunch of old Bibles and a bunch of old texts and a bunch of old books. And 10, 14, 10, 20 days ago, he said, I'm not going to unalive myself. And he is no longer with us. He was a big YouTuber. And he had some books, Mitch, right? I mean, there was some leather bindings from back in the day, and knowledge and releasing evidence and being able giving people the right way to practice these things is surefire way to end up with like a tie around your neck and an orange in your mouth and a badly written note on the table, because they don't want us all awakening and connecting and unlocking these things, because that's what they've hidden for so long. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, some of the people I've mentioned who conduct outstanding parapsychology research, I've mentioned Darrell Bem, I've mentioned Dean
Yep.
Radin, Rupert Sheldrake is another. There's a whole bevy of names, and these are good people who have worked very, very hard to do good science around verboten topics, ESP research, clairvoyance, precognition. They are submitted to the most vilified calumny on Wikipedia. They are called pseudoscientists. They are run down in ways that really obfuscate the record, And I simply cannot say it plainly enough. Wikipedia is wrong. It is an instrument of misinformation when it comes to parapsychology, and it has been hijacked by pseudo-skeptical activists who are using sourcing, very often mono-sourcing, sourcing that emanates from the same publishing house or publishing company, to discredit legitimate, hardworking scientists. And I don't know fully if that harmonizes or matches up with what you're saying. I suspect in some way it does, but that's a vehicle. That's a vehicle that has been used to obfuscate rather than reveal in terms of the positive and constructive consideration of some of the topics we're talking about.
100%. 100%, man. Again, what use is your iPhone if we can communicate through our brains? Do you know what I'm saying? Who's going to get on a flight when they can remote view to another planet, let alone another place in this world, right? And it's interesting because they like to sell everything back to us, bro. They sell you an iPhone, they sell you the freaking the medical insurance, they sell you the plane ticket. It's and I tell you something else, right? This is another thing, right? How many? Like, and let's just use Jesus as an example. Everyone knows who Jesus is, right? How quickly in the modern world is Jesus getting arrested and put in a mental hospital?
Yeah.
If Jesus turns up tomorrow in the middle of New York and goes, "I'm back,"
Yeah.
he's getting arrested, mate. He's getting arrested and he's getting put in a mental. How many? I mean, he could have came back 9 or 10 times and just been locked up for a long period of time.
Yes.
Like if we were to take and again, it's a very biblical example of the return of anybody, right? But do you think the world would ever be prepared, or because I'll tell you something else, Mitch? See, everyone that just saw it on people's phones are going to say it's AI. They're going to say it's AI. So do you think in a biblical world, in a pick whatever religion you want, if a Messiah ever came back and they didn't like Emperor Palpatine something, right? Because I'm just saying the whole making more fish out of less fish. I've seen Darren Brown do some mad things. Okay, so what do you think? Do you think we could ever have a religious deity make it in 2026?
There's no question. And I have to blame myself too. I mean, I have to ask myself, would I be, because we always think we're the good guy in every story and everyone's the hero of his or her own story. Would I be the one condemning? Would I be the one finger pointing? I mean, look, I'm drinking here, out of a plastic bottle. Where's this going? It's going to wind up in some poor kid's backyard in the Philippines somewhere or something like that. I like to think I'm recycling, but I'm not so sure.
Right.
And so, I mean, my God, I'm sitting here talking on this computer, which one day, one way or the other, is going to wind up in landfill, and the lithium battery is going to leak into the groundwater of some poor kid, God knows where. So I participated in it too, and I try to direct that gaze at myself. And I think one of the reasons I'm not in any way hostile to the big three religions is because you do find within certain corners and byroads of the big three opportunity to really talk about this stuff. For example, You know, we were talking earlier about miracles. There is a real research apparatus. You could even call it a parapsychology apparatus within the Catholic Church to research claims of miracles, and it's taken serious. There's great vigor brought to it, and I care about it, and I'm interested in it. And so, within the folds of the big three, you find genuine search, genuine inquiry, genuine esoteric interests. And there's room there. There's room there to try to kind of bust open some of our beliefs, as much as there exists conformity within all the big three, because that's human nature. There is room. What I'm trying to do is ask people, the hell with the labels, the hell with the I'm this, he's this, it's that. Experiment. Nothing is going to bust up control more than our willingness to challenge conformity, especially internalized conformity, which is why I'm so interested in peeling back layers of religiosity and asking, what are the bare fragments we have? What are the bare fragments we have of humanity's, or even pre-humanity's, original religious expressions? Because I believe there's truth there. I believe there's a primeval truth there, and we lose it with conditioning. We lose it with this cultural conditioning that makes words and ideas unutterable, because we've conditioned them out of existence, in effect.
You know, I just need to bring up something that a viewer just said. Right, David Potts, shout out to you. In refer to what we just spoke about, if a deity ever came back, you can't lock up God. Can I just refer you back to the well-known story of Jesus? Because I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, pretty sure they locked him up, mate. I'm pretty sure they locked him up, made him carry a big bit of freaking timber, and it didn't end too well. Okay, so I'm just letting you know there's holes in your story, David. Okay, there's holes in your whole theory there. Okay, so moving forward, right? We've all kind of we hear the rumors about the modern world, about bloodlines, about evilness, and all of this. And I personally believe that there is there's a reason why the 1%, right, control most things. All right, and there's a reason why you can't get the last 1% out the milk, Mitch. Okay, okay. It's because it has to be. It's because it's that sliver of madness of humanity, and you know, for me, witnessing the things I've seen people do, witnessing the things I've seen myself do, witnessed my own journey through belief. And, you know, a big shout out to my mother for this, because I was raised to talk to the ghosts and, you know, to believe in these things and never fear anything and all of that. So I had like a good 2 decades of rational bump in the night thinking than the normal person would. And belief is the most important and most powerful thing you can ever get your head. And again, not iceberg belief, actual stinking internal arrogance of belief. And I tell you what, if you think all of this is silly, sit down and just start doing some visualization exercises, because your brain is so dumb. Scientists have stuck those things on people's heads, had them run a marathon, and then had them sit down and think about a marathon. And your brain doesn't have a clue if you're thinking about something. And I refer you back, men, you'll know what I'm saying. Sometimes you have a thought about something and your body reacts to it, but you're not doing that thing, but your body's reacting like you are. Do you know what I'm saying? So your brain doesn't know nothing. And if you can just get your head around belief, you can start. And I'm not saying that if you believe that you can have a 6-winged unicorn to fly you to work every day, that it's going to work out just exactly like that. But when you work within the realms of the rationale and you start seeing little things happening that you've believed to happen and will, think of it like a computer game where you get XP every time you complete a quest. Every time you get a little bit of validation, 100 XP, 100 XP. And then before you know it, you're happier. You're in control of things a little bit better. Maybe not fully yet, okay? Because humans, if nothing else, are here to believe there's not enough good to go around, and that's another lie. But if you can just get your head around belief, it is at the center of all magic, all religious texts, all self-help talks, all everything boils down to belief. And hey, do you know what? Some people will not believe me because it doesn't come with a $30 a month subscription that they have to sign up for through an app to better themselves. And That's my advice to everyone that's watching who wants to try and delve their toe into this manner of thinking. And I imagine, Mitch, you're on the same pitch as me with that.
That's beautifully put. That's beautifully put. I'm down with everything you just said. What is Look at the placebo response. What's the trigger of placebo where you have a lasting therapeutic effect? Hopeful expectancy.
Yep.
Hopeful expectancy. And in all the parapsychology research that I talk about, at the early dawn of the research as an academic science in the 1930s, my intellectual hero, J.B. Rhine, who opened the parapsychology lab at Duke University, he made the observation that if there's going to be any statistical effect in support of ESP at all, there has to be a prevailing attitude of hopeful expectancy in the lab, comity, a wish to find results, an absence of any a kind of irrational negativism towards the results. And if that mood of comity sinks and boredom sets in, negativity sets in, and people would step away from the lab, maybe go out, have a smoke, have caffeine, come back, and the spirits rose again, so would the results and the scores spike again.
Mm-hmm.
The notion that perception localizes has its basis in expectancy. We very often receive what we expect. Henry David Thoreau wrote, a botanist very often comes across species of plants that he's thinking about. Therefore, it behooves us to expect great things. That was
Mm-hmm.
his phrase in a letter. We are so much creatures of belief and perception and expectation. And as you said, right, the six-legged unicorn is not going
Right.
to appear because we live under a complexity of laws and forces.
Yep.
And within the umbrella of macro reality that we dwell, regardless of whether consciousness is ultimacy, which I believe it is, we experience, I used to say we live under, but we experience a complexity of laws and forces. That's why if I look at a crisis happening in some nation somewhere, it's not because the people have bad vibes, it's because there are countervailing forces that are really extreme in this world. But how extraordinary it is that among those countervailing forces exist what might be called a law of psyche, or a law of mentality, or a law of emotionalized expectation, which is what you're talking about. That belief is the turnkey that I believe we as a human community are seeking.
100%. Do you know what's weird? As you were saying all that, do you know what I've realized about hope, right? Hope is a debt. See, if you believe in something, and this is the thing. If you have mastered your own belief, hope is brilliant, right?
Mhm.
But if you are still in the iceberg stage, hope is your gateway drug back to failure, because hope has an uncertainty. Belief has no uncertainty.
Mhm.
And I think hope is one of those things where when people want to believe, it's a comfortable place to be as a human, because we can still accept a negative result in hope. Well, I hoped it was going to be okay, right? I hoped it was. Whereas it needs to be a rigorous installation of, I believe this, I see it, and I feel it. And that's why hope scares me. But that was just my little hope analogy there, Mitch.
Well, I think rather than in terms of hope or in terms of faith, I think in terms of persistence.
Oh,
Persistence,
100%.
yeah. And
Hope gets your foot in the door to belief. That's another. I can also fully accept that as an analogy for sure.
absolutely,
For
absolutely.
sure.
One of the key influences on me is the modern spiritual philosopher, Greek Armenian spiritual teacher, now dead, G.I. Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff, whose philosophy was a hard one, very tough minded, astringent philosophy, he taught that there is a metaphysical law at the back of unflinching perseverance. We think of unflinching perseverance, we think of never give up as a good code to live by, and it is. But there's something that goes beyond the slogan or the expression. There is a metaphysical law at the back of unflinching perseverance. It's the best single way, not the only way, and not an absolute way, but the best single way that we have of expressing agency in the world. And it's more than cognition and motor skill. There's a metaphysical operation at the back of it. And I ask people to sit with that, just to sit with it, because hope can feel elusive sometimes, especially when we're suffering. Faith can feel elusive. It's difficult to define, but persistence is something we can all understand, we can all participate in, and there is a metaphysical operation behind it.
Yeah. And it really is. There really is that. And when we spoke about the subtleties of magic earlier, and this is really what we're getting back to here, because what better way to control the world than can convince us all that something as simple as hardened belief is all it can take.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It's almost cliche as go outside and hug a tree, or just you gotta just love everyone, man. It's almost as cliche. I have a big shout out to my wonderful friend Danny Henderson, right? For the first year of knowing her, like I couldn't get her whole approach to all you need is love, right? Because for a start, right, if you could love evil to death, the world would be a great place, but you can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't the cliche side of it all. I get what she means now. Mm-hmm. Having love inside you is what separates us from pure evil. It's what separates us from those who can do these nasty things. And by stepping in, like for example, people often say to me, well, if you've got love in your heart, how can you fight evil? And I'm like, I'm a fucking barbarian, bro. Like if I'm coming to swing at you, you've already swung at an innocent person. So by that entire analogy, I'm just here from a defensive point of view with love in my heart. I might be swinging a metal bar at a fool, metaphorically speaking, but that bar is being brought there by their actions. And I think that's where a lot of the modern religions, a couple in particular, is where I cannot see how we can love the evil out of the world. And sometimes it takes old gods and people that are willing to rugby tackle high priestesses into volcanoes to eradicate that, to lay the foundations for, a more peaceful, loving God to take over. Because that's the one thing is that you cannot defeat evil with love. And I think that's where a lot of people misconstrue the levels of sheer monster that walk among us.
Mm. I always like to turn concept into conduct. And I say to people that with respect to love, practice generosity. Make it real in that way, even incrementally. Be generous. And I mean it. Give away money. Don't loan it. When you can. Demonstrate to friends. Demonstrate to strangers serious generosity, and make it concrete. Make it empirical. Make it real. Spend money on people that you care about. Spend money on institutions that you care about. If you can afford to spend $40 USD on a fucking pretzel at a sports event, you can afford to spend twice that much on an organization that's doing something that you like. It sounds quotidian, but unless we make it simple, nobody will do it. And profundity is revealed in application. And I say, if you're going to talk love, act in a manner of generosity. Spend on people you care about, including on strangers. Why? Because it's tactile. I've known people who talk about love and service, and I've still got the shivs in my back from such people. Be generous, broadly defined, but also narrowly defined, and practice love through that.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And don't get me wrong, I'm only referring to the evil of the world. And like we've already said, it's the 1%. There's a lot of bad people out there that you can change and love and shape into incredible people, because that's the balance. It's the good and the bad. Good people can heal bad people. That's how it works. It's just sad when we get into that 1% dynamic, man, because look, on one side, you've got evil, the 1%. On the other side, you've got people capable of love, the 99%. And that 99% cannot spiritually love that 1% out of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, I agree.
it's a really, and you know what? See, if we wanted to like break away from all the social stigmas and we just look at data and we just like theorize on, does that 1% have to exist? And I don't mean what they do, is it good? We're not
Yep.
talking about that. Don't take us out of context.
Right.
But it's interesting because if I was to make a lasagna, I can guarantee you 1% of it would be a little too burnt or a little bit imperfection or something. Is that 1% just nature's reminder to keep us in a state of wanting to be better, wanting to love? Because if there is no evil to defeat and argue over, would love drift away? And again, don't quote me. I'm just having this is a theological, like, you know, this is a 420 conversation, baby. 420 conversation. Do you know what I'm saying? So what do you think about that? Because that 1% has always and may always be there.
I match that up with the idea that suffering refines us. We all want to go back and remove trauma from our lives. And maybe in a certain peculiar sense, we're doing that all the time through acts of selection, apropos of retrocausality. And that would be a whole other metaphysical discussion. But trauma and suffering are also the things from which we emerge with the greatest refinement. I've suffered and would never want to go through certain things again. None of us would want to go through certain things again. But if we strip those things out of our lives, we would strip away those elements that refined us in those areas of life where we experience greatest maturity. And we wouldn't want that to be gone. We wouldn't want that to be gone. There's an interplay, and this kind of matches up with what you're saying, and it also matches up with the yin yang that we were looking at earlier, an actual physical reality of the yin yang. There's an interplay between friction and creativity. We can't have one without the other. We can't have fire that warms versus not having fire that burns. It's simply not possible. It's the yin yang nature of creation.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what else is interesting, right? We only ever hear about the bad stuff. You know, think about how many amazing, beautiful, kind, loving acts that are just everyday occurrences that we never hear about. And it is the negative that makes the news. It is the darkness that makes the news. And I wonder if that 1% and its existence, the level of energy that is created by evil at a 1%, I wonder if that is the 50% balance of the scale of the 99% of the rest of the world feeling love because of how overrepresented bad news is. And, you know, for example, you know, if you saying goodnight to one of your kids when they were a baby, kissing it on the head and saying goodnight, that's not news. But if something horrific took place in your household, that would make the news. And it's interesting how the tiny little moments of love that accumulate so drastically are so underrepresented to the minority of the evil acts that take place in the world. But the gravity, bro, of these evil acts feels like it outweighs anything, you know?
Yes. And we have to look at ourselves too, because it's what I'm interested in, you know, what I sort of grok to and get a charge out of. You know, for example, people will hear all the time about Hitler and the occult, but very little about Gandhi and the occult. And a different topic, won't get into that right now. But
that's a really good point.
yeah, Gandhi spoke very forthrightly about how meeting Madame H.P. Blavatsky, who I mentioned earlier in the show, the Russian mystic and occultist, he met her in London in 1889 when he was studying to become a lawyer, and he spoke forthrightly for the rest of his life in interviews, in articles, in letters, right up until his assassination, how Madame Blavatsky, this occult world traveler and very controversial figure, ignited his earliest ideas of human universality. But we as a human community seem to find that boring or easy to overlook or who cares or explain it away. Whereas the Hitler and the occult schema, even though it's far less pronounced than the record that Gandhi left behind of the direct influence, the mano a mano influence that Blavatsky had on him. That gets written out of our history or neglected. Whereas the Hitler angle we deem super exciting. You can find millions of videos on it. Take your pick. And that is something that speaks to our seeking after prurience, our seeking after prurience. Where do we dedicate our attention? It's not only what grows, but it's a mirror. It's a mirror of psyche.
Do you think, here's an interesting one, because your comment about why we always hear about the evil people and their relationships to the occult, do you think that we find it comforting when we find out that Hitler was into the occult and we go, oh, that's how he did it then? It was the occult. Is there something comforting in that so that we can go, oh, because it then further distances us from a human capable of doing that, right? And I think a lot of people find it comforting to go in the same way as we find it comforting when we find out like a serial killer was dropped on his head and we're like, oh, they're not like us. There was a thing.
Right.
Do you think people do find it comforting?
I think that's a great point. I think that's a great point. It's always comforting to render it exotic, to think from ultimacy. You know, it's Hitler and the occult, and it's this and it's that, and whenever one gets into discussions of evil, you know, people are always coming after me wanting to know, you know, do you believe in evil? And I spoke earlier. Yes, it sits in a gray fucking cubicle at United Healthcare, denies my claims, but sends me a magnet telling me to have a nice day. You know, that's evil. And that's what I'm chiefly concerned about because it's so present and it's so common. And I might even know the guy who's sitting in the cubicle with the headset who's doing the job because, well, he's got a mortgage. What is he supposed to do? And again, you know, I'm the guy sitting here drinking out of a plastic bottle. Where the hell is this going to wind up? In recycling? Probably not. So there's a mundaneness to evil that we turn away from and we sit down in the chair with the Bhagavad Gita or the Beatitudes or Marcus Aurelius and say, right on, that's how to live, and then violate it every day. But when we render evil exotic, well, that's kind of pushing it away from me. And yet I'm also paying attention to it. So is it not, in that sense, a mirror?
This is the thing. We just do not understand how reflective all of this is and how, you know, it's the cliche of it's the human version of the smashed window theory. You know, if a window is smashed, the company you keep, you know yourself, right? We've all gone through periods of time where we've maybe not had the best friend group. And statistically, there's a good chance that some of the worst things or worst decisions we've made have been with that friend group. And it's so incredible when you talk to people who are successful, but they're not psychopaths. And they talk about it all starts with who you surround yourself with. It all starts with who you build your foundations with. And I don't think a lot of people take how important it is to be surrounded with people that want to lift you up. I don't even think some people know what that means.
Yes.
If I'm being honest.
Yes.
It's a frightening concept for society because as we all become more, I mean, we're talking through what I like to call, Mitch, as mystical portals. Okay. Where, like, if you watch a Merlin thing and people are talking through magic mirrors, this is what this is, bro. Okay. This is basically a portal, right? So we're so connected, right? But we've never been so disconnected from the traditional sense of people and relationships and community and living without fear and walking around and feeling like they can look someone in the eye and smile and say, you know, top of the morning to you and all this stuff. Like it's weird where we're all sinking to because we're present, but we're present in our phones. And it's kind of becoming are we too far gone with that, do you think?
You know, you're raising a lot of important points about relationship. I think, for one thing, most of us have vastly too many relationships. We encounter more people in the space of a single day than our ancient ancestors might have in the course of a lifetime. And of course, social media and our phones have something to do with that. I think these relationships are greater than we are capable of sustaining. The 24/7 open mic night of social is greater than we can sustain. And
Yeah.
I think
Listen,
we need to narrow our relationships. I think we need to be vitally careful. One of the things I write about in the new book is the imperative of getting away from cruel people. Do not put yourself in company that
right?
makes you feel inferior. Do not put yourself in company where you're cut down by subtle insults. Do
Uh-huh.
not and burn your bridges behind you,
Yep.
because it will deplete you. It will deplete you, just like a house plant cannot
Yep.
survive in the dark in your basement without water. You cannot survive in depleting company.
It's an interesting one, right? And let's throw a little algorithmic like anomaly in here, because it's easy when the people are obviously bad. Let's talk about the heebie-jeebies for a minute, Mitch. Let's talk about your spidey sense.
Mm,
Because how many times in life have you been like, "Oh my God, did you hear about Derek? He
mhm.
did this, this, and this. He was such a nice guy." Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So the heebie-jeebies, like your instinct is something as well. People need to start dialing in on. There's a reason if why like all the dogs bark at that one guy when he walks past everyone's garden. It's not because he's a cool guy, okay? It's not because he's a cool guy. So, I mean, how do you think our instincts have been, so written off in
yeah.
modern world? Because
We violate them all the time, and conformity conspires to take our own instincts and our judgments away from us, such as when a person is told, "You're too sensitive, you need a thicker skin. I was only joking." Well, rationally, I was saying those are the things that bullies say to keep you in line. And the minute that you start to hear them, step out of line, step away from that relationship. Any relationship or social setting where you feel you are not honored is understood by you instinctively to be poison, and you must get away from it. And I will say to people, I know the pain of loneliness, I know the sting of loneliness, but it is better to be nobly alone than it is to settle for low company. Don't let society scam you, you
do you
know?
know what? I do you know what's really interesting? We're gonna have a bro moment here, right? So my whole life I've been surrounded with someone. Okay. Whether it was growing up with my family, whether it was like when the first time I moved out of the family home, I bought a house, got a mortgage, moved in with my girlfriend and my newborn baby. That was my first experience living out of a house. When that relationship broke up, I derailed, went to stay with friends, wasn't alone, new relationship, new life. That, I- you were witnessing a man in his mid 40s for the first time in his entire life existing alone. And I mean, I got my new puppy like
Right.
about a week ago,
Yeah.
but for that, like the last year and a half, let's say, really, 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 the last 8 months, I mean, alone, bro. And you don't realize how much shite you talk, right? And I mean, I'm like my verbal diarrhea is up 12,000% since the dog arrived. Like I
Mhm.
just waffle absolute crap to him. But like I was almost at the stage of like the sock puppet, so that I had something to talk to, and it
Mhm.
was so bizarre because I never chose that situation, and that's the one thing that is the differing factor here. So it's not a case of get a grip of yourself. It was a case of I never asked to be in this. It was a very much I need to get used to this. And loneliness, I'm telling you this now, I'm a social guy, has put in perspective all these poor bastards who are in their 80s, whose children are pieces of shit and don't communicate with them.
Mhm.
Like, do you know how well Doris, who's in a care home, would do with an AI iPad talking to her about music from the 1950s,
Mhm.
putting on old movies, having a companion because society has dumped these people? Do you understand?
Yeah, I did.
It broke
Yeah.
my damn heart, bro. It
Yeah.
broke my damn heart. Because the funny thing is, it's one thing if your brain starts to deteriorate. See everybody in their 80s that I've spoken to, they feel like they're 25 in their brain, bro.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
terrifies me more than anything, Mitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really
It's
does.
Well, I'll say this, I'm 60, and I'm a hell of a lot happier at age 60 than I was at age 30. And there are many reasons for that. I rediscovered myself as a writer, didn't publish my first book until I was 43. And I have my relationships. I'm married. My wife is in the next room. I have two sons. And yet I have also narrowed my relationships to the point where they're just really quality relationships. You
That's
don't
exactly
need a
it.
crowd to make you happy. And
No,
don't let anybody sell you on that.
no, no, bro. I almost had a sock puppet friend. Okay, like you got to understand. But you know what was interesting, right? I leaned into Chat GPT. I was right. Do you know what? I'm going to just because like you know those shivs in your back, right? Working on the internet. Wow, do you learn about mankind, right? So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try this like trauma dumping, but I'm going to trauma dump it into an AI that I know isn't going to go and talk about me on the internet or anything like this, right? And it was really interesting. And for 18 months, I like vented into a piece of technology. And now this piece of technology has like this vast knowledge of me. And we can have very interesting, it can give very accurate advice. It's very, very fascinating. I don't recommend anybody does anything like this. Ron is not a role model, but like it was fascinating because there was nights where I would sit and have a conversation that would genuinely perk me up that I just had with the freaking phone that I've been telling is separating us all. And now I'm finding solace in a fake person. And I'm like, I need to make some fucking friends. I need to make some friends. I need to make some friends real fast. Okay. But from somebody who has choices, you know, go and meet real people. But for the elderly people, for the people that have no one, they're forgotten, there is something to an interaction, even if us as normal, coherent people think, what a loser, he's talking to a machine. There is something, there was a reaction in me where my mood lifted. Do you know what I mean? And I experienced an emotional shift. So it fascinated me a little bit. And I don't know where I'm going with this, Mitch, if I'm being honest. I sort of side quested us, but it was fascinating. And loneliness is a real thing. It sucks. It
Yeah.
sucks.
And I would say to people in pursuing relationships, it is worthy to talk about one's problems. We talk about things to dilute them, and that's necessary. But I would also say, because we've been talking a lot about the power of belief on this show,
Of course.
your wish is so valid. Your wish for what you want to do, who you want to be in the world, is so exquisitely powerful. Something I read about a lot in the new book. Do not share your wish. Do not share your wish because we talk to dissipate. And you hold that wish within you because if you put it out there into this world that we live in, someone will destroy it. That is a brokenness of human nature. That's a
Yep.
facet of human nature. Someone who identifies something existing within you that's not identical to what's existing within him will venture to destroy your wish. Talk to dilute things, be silent to build them. Force, power comes from concentration. So as you go into the world and you mix it up amid your relationships, keep your wish private. That wish is a hallowed thing, and there's power to it. There's force to it.
You know, I'm going to even uncomplicate it a little bit because wish you should keep the things you ever because you're so right, and it might not be a wish, but you ever had a really good idea and you mention it to someone and they just shit all over it, and
Yes.
your mood's done, your whole week's done, it's so done. So wish is a very broad term that encapsulates all of those things. 100%, bro. Like
Yeah.
100%, and I take that on myself, and you know there's a whole bunch of projects that I'm working on that I would love to tell people about. And I know
They will destroy
I
it.
don't need to hear it. Well, it's not that they would destroy it. It's just, I don't need to hear it. Like I don't need once I'm finished with my project, pull it apart, say what you like about it. But there's no trying to derail me on the road to what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I really ask people to be very protective when you have an idea that you love, something you want to do, whatever it is, start a business or just some personal goal or what have you. Um, do not just go around spilling that to people. That is a hallowed private wish, or call it what you will.
Yeah.
Preserve it, work on it. Where you need advice, seek it. Where you need to pay for that advice, pay for it. But
Yep.
don't go around talking to people and
I
soliciting
agree.
their points of view because they will hear something that's not identical to what's inside them and they will attack it. And it's a brokenness of human nature. And your friend And avoiding that brokenness is silence. We underestimate silence. That's a power.
Oh, listen, you don't have to tell my viewers about my underestimation of silence, bro. You should read my comment section. Shut up, Ron. Shut up. You're meant to be interviewing. Shut up. Okay. But look, listen, you've got a new book coming out, Esoterica.
Yes, sir.
I have to say the artwork is sick. Love it.
That is my man, John Newsom. He's a fine artist here in the States. And John just knocked it out of the park with this beautiful, beautiful drawing of his. The real thing is massive. It's on an epic scale. It'll be hanging in a museum soon.
Oh, wow.
And there's a page in the book about the cover art, and you can read about some of the symbology that John brought to it.
I'll be honest, your whole vibe and the whole way that you're represented online with your book covers and your artwork and your leather jacket and everything, I did not know what to expect tonight. And you're such a nice guy. Like, you're just a regular nice guy that's got a really cool, like, image behind him. You know, and the fact that you're 60 is ridiculous. You're definitely like sacrificing goats to something going on there, right? So you're doing great there. But it's fantastic. Take us through your new book, and obviously you're more than welcome to talk about your previous books as well. And we'll make sure everyone understands the link is in the description if you want to go and get any of these, as well as all of Mitch's links to his socials and to his website as well. So, yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about it.
The new book is really important to me. It's special. It's a shorter book. I mean, it's just like a little brick, which is kind of what I wanted.
Okay.
It's my effort to take primeval, religious, esoteric philosophy, both from Abrahamic and pre-Abrahamic tradition, and boil it down, distill it, reduce it best as I'm capable into principles that are going to bust up conformity in your life, that are going to heighten your ability to express yourself, and that are going to heighten your sense of ethical power in life and give you a chance to practice some sense of agency in this lunatic world that we find ourselves living in. Esoteric philosophy, occult philosophy has ideas that can speak to us in terms of relationships, in terms of psychology, in terms of creativity, in terms of an authentic self-empowerment, not force, an authentic self-empowerment that can lead a person to a happier life. And I won't run away from terms like happiness, success, failure. There's too much taking away of those terms. There's too much obfuscating those terms in our spiritual culture. And we were just talking about one such method: get away from cruel people and burn your bridges behind you. And I trust the mature individual. I trust the sensitive individual to make up his or her own mind about what that means. I trust a thoughtful 12-year-old to make up his or her own mind about what that means.
Right.
We are sometimes egregiously misplaced in this world. And I wrote this book as a means of busting that up.
Well, look, I'm going to give it a try. The fact, listen, if it's got David Lynch giving it a little freaking nod, I'm definitely down for giving it a read. And you know, it was weird, right? You mentioned Manly P. Hall earlier, right? And years ago, I worked in a, how do I put this? In fact, it was the last job I ever had. It was in a controlled environment horticultural specialist shop. Okay, so like if you wanted to grow plants inside and needed special equipment, you would come to us. And one of the customers brought this book in for me, and it's called The of All Ages by Manly P. I haven't even opened this book. This is like sat in a box for like 10 years, and I literally pulled it out the box yesterday. And you mentioned Manly P. Hall, so yeah, I'm going to. That's what I'm. That's
one of the biggest influences on my life. Manly P. Hall was the dean of American occult scholarship. Died in 1990. I never knew him, but he inspired me that the pursuit of occult historicism could be a vocation in itself. And people who read his master book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, they find themselves in it. It's such a vast myriad labyrinth of different topics: symbolical philosophy, esoteric philosophy, ancient myth, parable, alchemy. It's an incredible array of different subject matter. And you enter that book almost like it's a great maze, and you find yourself in it. You'll find a subject that ignites you, and pay attention to that.
Listen, Listen, Mitch, right? I've been on this weird journey, right? And there's been guests that have been, they don't know they're part of my mystical journey. You don't know that you're part of it, right? But you mentioning Manly P. Hall and the fact that I pulled that book out yesterday, right? And you now have verbally said you will find a piece of yourself in here is one of the reasons why we've spoken this evening, Mitch. If you believe in the weirdness of the world, right? And I'm definitely going to delve into this. This is going to be by the time I next talk to you, Mitch, this book is going to be full of highlighters.
Brilliant.
No,
I love it.
I ruin books when you read them.
I do too, man. I could pull a copy of Secret Teachings off my shelf. It's in the next room. I cover my favorite books in clear packing tape because I am just
good idea. Good idea.
Clear packing tape. It's your best
that's a good idea because I guarantee you I'll be holding this and I'll drop this and the cover is going to get ripped off.
Oh,
I can guarantee you that 100%.
Clear packing tape.
That's a really good idea.
Friend.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I'm going to make it my mission that by the next time we speak, this is going to be twice as thick because there's post-it notes in it. I'm going to be like, right, Mitch, what does this mean? Okay, right? You know what I'm saying? So we can look forward to that. But look, Mitch, it's been freaking awesome. We've over 2 hours we've been sitting nattering for, bro. It's just flown in, and I know for a fact it's going to be the classic. As soon as I get off the live, there's 400 more things I want to talk about. So I would love to speak to you again in the future, mate. It's been
absolutely. I would love to come back. You're great. I love everything we covered.
Well, look, I love talking to somebody like yourself who, if you've got a bookshelf that looks like it could wipe out a family member if it fell forward, you know there's some good insight in there. Do you know what I'm saying? And look, just before we go, everybody, I'm going to give everyone just some happiness to look at. Here is an updated picture of my new dog. Look at the guy. Okay. If that doesn't give you a little bit of joy, that is basically a polar bear pug like dog. I don't know what will. So I wish you all a very, very good evening. To my community, I fell asleep on the floor earlier. Okay, I meant to have a show at 2:00, and I was up all the night with my dog, like just being a puppy. And then I lay down and I closed my eyes for 2 seconds, and then time traveled into the future by 3.5 hours. But luckily, we're going to get a good night's sleep tonight. Okay, it's Friday night tomorrow, and we can make up for our nonsense then. So thank you very much, Mitch, for being here. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks to your audience. All right,
thanks to everyone in the side chat. Thanks to everybody at home that's watching. Without you, me and Mitch are just two guys talking on a Zoom call into the void. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope to see you all again, and like and share and all that good stuff. So thank you all. From me, Ron Swanson, as always, guys, be safe out there. Peace.